Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are out there in this beautiful world. It's time for us all to step out onto the high wire. I have to say, for those of you that maybe missed last week, I wasn't here. It's great to be back at my desk. I really missed having the opportunity to rant last week, so you may get a whole earful this week, but I want to give a shout out to Jim Meehan for stepping up, taking over here and doing such a beautiful job guiding this show last week. Amazing job. If you missed it, his interview with Kevin McKiernan was absolutely riveting. We were sitting in the middle of our camping trip, listening to it ourselves. I was a little bit jealous. What an amazing interview. So go back and check that out if you haven't had the opportunity. We have a really spectacular show today. In fact, it's almost hard to breathe in here. There are so many IQ points floating around in the building right now. Usually the space is just consumed by our Catherine Layton, who I think is the smartest person on the team when it comes to science. But we've got in studio today Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Geert Vanden Bosch. We're going to talk to them both about the different things that they're focused on right now with the COVID, the vaccine. Is it going away? What's happening with the rise in all-cause mortality? Both those minds together in one place. It should be really amazing. But first, the tragedy that I think has got us all just riveted to our televisions, praying, trying to give our heartfelt thoughts to those victims in the Maui fires. This is what this has looked like in our news.
Maui is on fire. Evacuations are underway. Tens of thousands of people are without power. And there is already extensive property damage, including in the popular tourist town of Lahaina.
Some taking shelter behind the seawall, others jumping into the ocean to escape the flames.
Both sides, to the left and the right, are on fire.
19-year-old Noah Tompkinson wading in the water with his mother and younger brother for 5 hours.
This is the overhead view of the sweeping devastation in Lahaina.
80% of Maui's historic town in ruins. This gridlock of charred cars details the desperation as many attempted to escape a wall of racing flames.
Oh no, guys. No, we have to leave.
This is now the deadliest wildfire in modern U.S. history.
Everything in Lahaina has been decimated, including our house.
Everything's gone. All the memories, all the places that we built beautiful memories together is gone. And so I'm just grateful that they made it out okay and just praying for the best outcome for the rest of my family.
The winds were howling overnight, and I even checked at about 4 a.m. because I was surprised that I had missed a weather advisory, and there was still no advisory.
People were not informed except for 5 minutes before they had to evacuate. And this was via a cell phone message, an emergency alert.
We have a tsunami warning system on this island. They did not activate it.
Did you hear any alarms? Did you get any kind of warning?
No alarms, no warning, nothing. No sign, nothing. Where were you guys to try and get us out, evacuate us? No, we're mad. We're mad. We didn't just lose our homes. We lost our town, lost history, Our kids are traumatized. You guys messed up real bad.
I'm still looking for friends and close family. Wow. I just want to let the world know it's worse than they think.
While Lahaina sat in ruins, no assistance came for more than 2 days.
Water, propane tanks, fuel, baby supplies, and clothing. People in this community are doing everything they can for their neighbors. They say this is way more than what the local and federal government is doing for people in Lahaina.
Government officials are trying to shut down local assistance. It seems like they only want FEMA and they only want Red Cross.
They are sending donations back. If it's not donated directly to FEMA or Red Cross, and they're not going to let it in.
None of this is eligible for giving out. Tell me why. I have no freaking clue.
They're all fearful that they're going to lose their property along with their home and their investment. So that's and you can hear it in the governor's voice or his languaging when he talks about rebuilding Lahaina.
I'm already thinking about ways for the state to acquire that land so that we can put it into workforce housing, to put it back into families, or to make it open spaces in perpetuity as a memorial to people who were lost.
I am so frustrated with investors and realtors calling the families who lost their home, offering to buy their land. How dare you do that to our community right now? Shame on you. Shame on you.
The world needs to see what's happening here, and the truth is not being shown.
Just horrible images, and you know, I have to say, in some ways, it's triggering a little bit of PTSD in me. As many of you that have been watching this show for years know, back in 2018, I lost my family, Lee and I and our kids lost. That was our home in the Maui, the Woolsey fires that swept down through Maui. Malibu, where we were living. And similarly, not a lot of answers to why there was no fire department or help in that situation. So my heart really is connected with those in Maui that have gone through this. And you really can't get a perspective, and news cameras aren't allowed in. So we worked hard to try and find somebody that had been in there that could give us some sense of what was really going on. And it's my honor and pleasure to be joined right now by Mike Cicchino, who is a resident, was right in the middle of it. Mike, thank you for joining me.
Of course.
I know there's really no words that can be said at this time when you've lost just about everything you own and watched the devastation around you. We have an image that you had as the fires were burning, your wife and I, you know, I think in some ways wondering if you were going to survive it. This is just sort of that moment that you captured on your own phone.
Coast Guard. If anybody does find this, it's pretty scary, but we're going to be okay.
You know, that moment, so you'd made your way down to the water, it appears, as those that survived, you had to get down out of the hills, away from the fire and down to the water. Reports of people hiding literally in the water. Tell me just what was your experience? We're hearing there was no warning. Was that true for you? How does this start in your life? What is the moment you realize there's a fire and there's danger?
I just happened to leave the house just to see if I could make it to the other side of the island to grab a generator. And within 10 to 15 seconds of leaving my home, my whole neighborhood was engulfed in flames. But like you said, absolutely no warning, no siren. We do have an alert system where it alerts us by text. I've had a little bit of a signal. I've never received any text. And at points when we did hop in the car 15 minutes later, that's when they made the announcement probably over 15 minutes later, that's when they made the announcement over the radio to evacuate. But by that point, it was too late.
Now, you know, I know that when I was going through this situation, when it happened to me in Malibu, I saw the fire again. I really didn't get warning in time, but this is mostly because I didn't have a television on. There's no sirens, but it was just coming down the hill. Again, for us, the wind was blowing so hard, and I just really grabbed my son, who was with me. Luckily, my wife was out of town, and just said, just grab a few clothes. We lost everything too. In that moment, you don't know where the fire is. You don't know if it's wrapped around. You don't know if you're going to get down to the road. What was it like there for you? Could you tell where the fire was, or just feel like it was everywhere?
Well, first, I want to say I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm happy that you and your family, made it out alive. I've been through that situation. It's absolutely terrifying. And I know that you guys are probably still dealing with it. Basically, when we started to leave the house, which if you watch our live announcements by our government that they do, our governor and mayor, they are flat out lying to us on there, as far as they're telling us and telling the world that they didn't have any roadblocks. There were definitely 1,000% roadblocks that we could not get through. And if they would have let us through and let some of those other people through, a lot more lives would have been saved.
Wow.
a lot of us are in shock about how much our government is literally lying to our face. And I was there, and they're lying to everybody. They're just trying to downsize this. And I think they're afraid a lot of locals are going to freak out. They're afraid of lawsuits. But they basically because of that forced us into pigeonholed us into a death trap. And a lot of people died because of what they did. Not only the warnings, but blocking us in from every road. And everything went wrong that day. They really did fail us.
You know, just from an outsider, and because, on this show, we've learned to really not trust government a whole lot, and it's really failed us so many times. But one of the things that gives me the sense we're being lied to is when I see the images that we're seeing come out of there, some of these photos and some of the video that you've provided us, when I only see a death toll going from 80 to like 100, I think, and 6 I heard this morning over 3 days, that seems impossible to me. It seems to me there must be a cover-up on the amount of bodies that are there. They're obviously trying to slow roll the devastation, figure out how they're going to explain it, cover their own tracks. And, so much, when you watch so much effort going into trying to protect their own butts in the government, and we're hearing so little effort, it seems, getting the supplies, getting people to their home, helping the people that are there. What does that make you feel?
Anger. I can't even describe the amount of anger I have towards our government. Before, I'll be honest, I had more trust in our government. I grew up, that they're there to take care of us, especially in need. They're going to safeguard us from things like this and warn us, but none of that happened. And as of right now, the FEMA is trying to take over, but they're not assisting us at all. I've had absolutely zero assistance from FEMA. They're saying they're giving out $700 checks to people. I've never received one, and they're not going to give me one because I happen to run a business out of my home, and I also had a little bit of insurance. But that insurance, they said they can only put me up in a hotel room for 7 days. Then where am I going to be after that?
Right.
FEMA, since I owned a business, has basically said, we'll give you a small business loan. I just want a place to live. I want to start my business back up, but how am I possibly going to do that when I don't even have a place to rest my head at night? I'm jumping that's my house that you're seeing right now.
Wow.
It's completely, that was my business. That was my whole life. I've lived there for 16 years. And even if I did receive that $700, living here in Maui, that's a night at a hotel room. One night at a hotel room for these people. Fortunately, I have family where we're jumping from house to house, but $700 is insulting for those people that are getting that. I'm glad they're getting at least $700, but you have to imagine even our McDonald's is inflated here. If you go to McDonald's for 2 people, you're spending $50.
Wow.
Most of those people have already gone through that money, and a lot of locals are using that money to help locals. And the only help that we've received the whole time from this whole situation is from the churches, from the Calvary Church over here. The Catholic Church is even going to try to help out with housing. But the government hasn't helped me at all, my family at all.
Similarly, while the fires are going on and there's very little help around, you are one of those types of individuals that charge back, in there to try and get some help, looking for animals and people. This is just one of the videos you were shooting while you're going through that experience.
Asher! Hey buddy, you okay? Shit. Asher! Asher! Hey, where are you? Are you okay? Gotta get up. Here, come in here. Just head down that way. Are you all burnt? Are you burnt? Okay, you gotta go down there, okay? I'll go. Right here's bad, there's a lot of smoke, you gotta go. Okay, I'll be back. I'll be back for you. Asher! Raina! Hey, come on, buddy. Hey, we gotta go. The Coast Guard's coming in. Is this your dog? Oh, this is Raina, right? Okay, oh, thank God.
As you sort of made your way through the neighborhoods there, what was, how would you describe that? And seeing, most of us have never actually seen a body. I mean, that was fairly graphic. Hopefully those watching aren't too offended by seeing that, but I think it's important that we get a sense of what that experience was like.
I mean, I've never been to war. I've never been in any type of disaster, but I would guess that it was just like a war zone. I mean, there's dead bodies, people screaming, babies out there that I never saw again. A lot of people were, you could just see that the smoke was slowly killing them. And that's, I was trying to run and help as many people as I can to get out of the area that they were, because if they stay there any longer, they would have just, went to sleep and died.
Wow.
But the best thing that I can describe is literally like a nuclear bomb or atomic bomb went off. But imagine that bomb going off continuously for 8 hours. So when we're ducking into the water or jumping in the water, ducking behind the wall, the flames were going at 70 miles per hour towards us. It's one of the most indescribable, or probably one of the hardest to describe situations and feelings. It's hard to put in words. It really is.
Now, your wife was with you, obviously both got away. How is she doing?
I mean, we're going through some mental issues right now. I wish I could say she was better. We're hanging in there. We're one of the lucky ones. We feel bad complaining about our situation when there's people out there that are way worse off than us and getting no assistance. There's people that have lost their house, their family's dead, they don't have any money. We are at least alive and have each other, so we feel very grateful. We are starting to kind of go through a guilt part of the grieving, where why did we make it out alive? Why did we make it out with our lives and with each other? And all these people are out there that didn't. And then there's people out there that were helping during the fire, and a week later they're still out there helping and haven't even left Lahaina. And the local government's not letting us locals in there to help at all. They want to make sure that they're controlling everything. So people are getting stopped, even if they're trying to bring in donations. So like I was kind of mentioning before, all those donations that the locals are trying to help with are being brought to churches. And that's how I've been getting my help, not from FEMA.
Wow. What are the next steps right now as you look? I realize it's hard to have any sort of bird's eye view in the middle of the tragedy there. So as you sit in the middle of it, what are your thoughts right now? What is it next steps for you?
We felt like we just got out of a fire that was about to take our lives. Now we feel like we're back into another fire with the U.S. government, basically. So we feel like we just went through all this. Now the government's putting us through more. And just watching them flat out lie to our faces, and me knowing for a fact that they're lying to our faces because I was there, and what they're saying is 100% untrue. There's way more bodies out there than what they're saying. There's a lot more. And I can't give like sources or anything, but they're anticipating over 500, but less than 1,000. Most of those are going to be children, or actually not most, but a lot are going to be children. Wow. I have a lot of friends finding children out there. These schools were off that day because of the electric. So the parents still went to work, but the children were stuck at home. So you can imagine being 10 years old, taking care of your your siblings and having a giant fire, what are they? They don't know what to do.
Oh my God.
But they're not announcing this stuff on the news. This is probably, I'm mentioning it to you now, but they're hiding a lot of stuff from the outside world, and it's pretty upsetting. Right now, we just want to hear that, a sorry. There's things that went wrong. We're trying to do what we can, but they're just so defensive. I think they're just trying to cover their butt right now and not get sued, is what it's coming down to, which is just making it worse for us.
You have a GoFundMe to sort of get through this. So let's just give people, if you want to help out here, the GoFundMe.com. There's that Maui Fire, Mike and Andreza Chiquino. So if you want to help out, that's how we do it. And I'm sure there's many, many GoFundMes out there right now trying to figure out a way through all of this. What will you do with those funds? What's the plan?
Well, we can't even find housing right now. We're jumping from house to house. So, we would like to do it so we can use it for rent, food right now, because the food we're so appreciative of the churches giving us food, but we need more vegetables. We need real food that we can eat, not just canned food. Sometimes we can get some fruit, which is awesome, but we need to start to get our lives a little bit back to normal. We would also like to start our business again, because there's a lot of jobs here are gone. So our concern now is all the money we're just trying to get as much as we can right now, because we don't know the future. We don't know how we're going to start our business again. There's a housing crisis out here already. If you wanted to buy a medium income house, it's going to be $1 million here in Maui.
Wow.
So you can imagine, with all those housings gone, thousands of people displaced, it's only going to go up. And it's really unfortunate. There's people that are leaving Maui that have been here almost my whole life, but I can't leave Maui. My whole family's here. My daughter's here. It's not a choice for us. We're going to stay and push through it, but we don't know where we're going to live. We have no permanent place to live.
Well, Mike, first of all, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing with us your thoughts in this very difficult time. Our prayers are with you. I want to thank you for your heroism, running in there, trying to help when others aren't, others that were paid and funded to be there for exactly those moments. Stay in touch with us. We want to, sort of hear how this all works out, and maybe we can bring you back on and check in with you a little bit further down the road.
Of course, there's so much going on here. There's probably going to be updates almost every day. So please keep in touch. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have.
I also want to say, just because I have been through it, it does, it is really hard in the middle of those situations, but there is hope. Just share with your wife that, we get through these things. Love, what doesn't take away is our love, doesn't take away our relationships, and what you'll, end up having to stay focused on is just that you're alive, you have your life, and now we have to do something with it. All right, so we'll keep you in our prayers.
We appreciate that. And if I may just mention, there are a lot of people who need help. I always appreciate the help that anybody can give us, especially my 4-year-old lost everything too. But please don't actually donate to Red Cross or FEMA for people that are out there. They're not helping us. Try to find local families that you can help. And then there's also a local organization called Maui Strong, and they've been helping out a lot more than the government right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, and take care. We'll stay in touch. We wanted to also get a sense, from people that are in the middle of disasters all the time. We reached out to a good friend of ours, Steve Slepcevic, who is a disaster specialist, and he's joining me now with Sam Eaton. Steve, you see a lot. You've been at Katrina. You've been in the middle of events like this. How does this compare to all of the disasters that you have been in the middle of, trying to help people through those situations, their homes, their lives? How bad is this? Is it as bad as it appears in the news? Worse?
Well, what I can tell you is that for me, in doing this since Hurricane Andrew, since '89, that I got in this business, responding to both national and international disasters, this was one of the worst responses on the government side I've ever seen. So when you see the police department blocking a downed line, but they're blocking an area where he's parked in the area where cars can get by and cars are backed up for an hour and a half, Mike is correct. The response was horrific. When we show up at the EOC and they have generators stacked there, and we're like, hey, we can bring you power, we can bring you the entire thing to set it up, and they're like, no, we're good. I'm like, well, based on results, you're not good. You have generators here, but you have no electricians, no cables. You don't have this whole thing set up properly. And how is it that a friend of ours can actually drive into town the next day, unabated, no security perimeter, drive by vehicles with burnt bodies in it as he's driving his motorcycle in it? You know, how can one of our friends then deal with these type of these images and the PTSD that's coming from it? So everything that Mike said is absolutely accurate. And then this is several days. So to me, accountability, right? These people have to be clear, concise. You cannot make mistakes. And if you look at, they were the last EOC to open up. So they weren't properly staffed, staged. They didn't put the alarms out or the sirens. And their excuse of like, well, we don't want people to run up to the hills. What are you talking about? People are conscious. They know, hey, there's a fire up there.
Yeah, how about I hear an alarm. If I step outside of my house, I will see what's going on and figure it out from there. I mean, like was Mike saying, is he doesn't leave his house for his generator at that moment. He doesn't see what's going on. And I'll be honest, when it happened to us, I was lucky that I had a friend text me and said, I heard there was a fire in Malibu. Do you need any help? I was like, fire? So we didn't really have an alarm either. And I suppose it was I didn't have my TV on. I just had nothing on inside my house. Luckily, my friend texts me otherwise. And I walked out of my house, and that's when I realized the side of the mountain basically I live on was nothing but flames rushing towards me. So all you need is to be told, get out of your house, and you can figure it out there. They didn't even do that. I mean, and just be clear, you're a private company. You don't work for the government. You go in many times, I guess. What do you tend to work for? Insurance companies, or who sends you in? Like, how do you get there?
No, we work for private individuals. So typically hospitals, ports, airports, private asset owners, commercial real estate owners. They know not to trust the government. So they call us in ahead of time if it's a hurricane, many times 3-4 days before, to shore up their assets, to minimize the risk, to put the comms in place, bring in the additional paramedics, bring in the security detail, bring in the fuel, the power, everything else to keep that facility operational. They know FEMA's not going to be there. They don't count on the public utilities or the public officials to do anything for them. They know they have to stand it alone. But like you shared on the Woolsey fire, if you remember, the fire departments were all pushed up to Pepperdine, and you couldn't find fire trucks down in the lower area where people's homes were burning. So similar to this, they had pushed the firefighters up into the mountains in this one region to fight another fire. When a fire wasn't completely contained, there wasn't any fire trucks down on Front Street. And then they had a problem with the water pressure. So when they hooked up to the fire hydrants, they couldn't push water out.
You know, Sam, we had, I mean, and it's very similar. Many of the same stories that I experienced. We paid, I think, you know, in Malibu, hundreds of dollars a month extra for a fire line. They call it a water line. You're paying just to be ready, and then there was no water in it when we needed it. When you hear things like, you know, well, the electrical line came down, that took away some of our abilities to do things. And then you ask, I mean, any intelligent person says, fires bring down power lines. You weren't prepared for that. You don't have alarm systems that work in that. And we start thinking, with all the millions and billions of dollars in taxpayer money that goes to special places like this that know there's potentials for hurricanes and things like that, how can they be this unprepared?
Very tough. Background, 30 years in the fire service, been to quite a number of disasters myself. Also with the company, we've responded to some major incidents. You know, when I see what happened, you know, arriving here, it didn't have the feel of the disaster. If you looked at the infrastructure that should be there in place, the stuff that FEMA would normally bring in, the things that you would normally see, you didn't see those things. And And I think that it was most exhibited in the faces of the locals here. You know, when you're talking to somebody that's basically been working the last week previously for this guy, we spoke to an individual that had been trapped every day, getting up to bring food and supplies himself as a private citizen to find a way to help those that were actually in the area, the Lahaina area, to watch him break down, in tears, saying, "Where's the help? Why are we having to do this? Why is Maui having to help Maui? Where's the outside help?" And then you paint it in contrast to what's happening at the border of our country, what's happening in Ukraine. You look at the money that's flowing in different directions, but this was not. It just did not feel like they had a handle on a lot of things. It's easy to point at the, please don't look at the frontline workers or the firefighters, because they're being driven by their own policies and procedures, but also they have a desire to be part of that response. Leadership from above, I think, is where the mistakes were made, and certainly, hopefully, there'll be some after action where they'll look into the details of that.
I would say at this point that wherever you live, every different region has some ability to be pressed into a dangerous situation like this. I've obviously been through my own experience, and there's things that we just weren't prepared for. We hadn't really itemized all the things that we own that I now do when I go into my house. We sort of stay on top of what is actually in our house, in our dwellings. But Steve, do you have some recommendations of things for people to prepare, or should a disaster happen, what's the best way to handle it?
For me, I always say have a disaster plan, more of an all scenarios based disaster plan for your family, right? Because this stuff is happening constantly, right? So you have everything from, having your satellite phone, a meeting place, doing a quarterly drill, right? The next thing is obviously documenting everything, reviewing the policy, making sure that, when it comes to reviewing the policy, it's not just a matter of calling your agent, but I always say, get a third party opinion from a private insurance adjuster, in that capacity, before you enter. Another thing that's really important is that when people are approaching these properties, you have to know what the hazards are, right? It's structural, environmental, mechanical. You can't start sifting through the property and then there's, without proper PPEs. So hire a third party environmental consultant in these things that are totally burned. And the ones that aren't totally burned, before you enter it, there's highly toxic. These cars burn, electronics, there's asbestos, lead. There's all types of chemicals that were burned and now are blown into people's homes in the surrounding area. So those areas have to be properly remediated. Then a third-party consultant, environmental consultant, should come in there and provide a clearance testing that it's safe to reoccupy. Because I'm not going to compare it to 9/11, but how they had multiple, what was the number for the firefighters that got cancer from
frontline workers? Close to 15,000 have gotten cancer since the actual event itself.
Right.
More people affected in a health situation from 9/11 than were ever initially.
Right.
So it's going to be a toxic mess for a while. The trucks, the debris moving through those areas, But with this, for us as first responders, the satellite phone store has always been really big for us on getting stuff for us when we need it. They're also there for the community. So a lot of times they'll donate the phones, especially in those areas. But don't be that person. Get it ahead of time, be prepared. Because these things are happening more and more, not just the wildfires and the hurricanes, but as you know, Hawaii still, we're going into the peak of hurricane season. There's another one that's just passing just below us right now. Wow. And those high pressure systems create what they call the Chinook winds, and it comes off those mountains, and any spark will just light up other neighborhoods.
It's very difficult for people to get away, for sure.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Something like the wind-driven fire. This was a fire that was driven by the wind. Obviously, bad poor conditions part of that, drought-like conditions, and clearly, when you have something like that, early warning is very important. But there's little time to actually react, and you experienced that yourself, Del.
Yeah.
Same type of thing. It is horrific what they went through, and the people that survived, what they saw, what they're exposed to, even just the visuals, but of course the health side of this. Those that were sitting in the water, affected by this, with the embers coming down, that very toxic, heavily laden chemical smoke that was on them, Many of them probably perished from, basically smoke inhalation. Even though they weren't burned, they couldn't breathe. There's no space there. The real tragedy here to me is what the response afterwards, and that's where it really starts to look very, very. There's a lot of lessons learned here, a lot of things that the Maui officials need to take a look at.
I feel like I sit here and think we're the United States of America. We're the richest country in the world. We have the biggest military in the world. We can go and fight wars that nobody even knows why we're there. In a moment like this, in the movies, the National Guard is flying in. You got FEMA. Everybody's setting up tents and camps, and we're moving people through because we're a first world nation. What is going on? Why are we so incapable of having a response? Why? And it's every time. It felt like the same thing with Katrina. Every time, it's as though we have no idea. Since the dawn of man, we've never figured out how to handle a disaster. I know you're guys like you, Steve, and you give classes. You're there to teach government. You're there to help. You've been trying to get this. Why are we so incapable? What is it? Just bureaucracy is useless, and there's no way to ever get these people to do it right? It's so frustrating to watch over and over again this level of failure and have to accept it, to have to accept that our government is this incapable of handling a dramatic situation. And God forbid we ever actually have a war or something come at us, on our homeland. I can't imagine. We can't handle a fire or a hurricane. What do we do if we're ever under attack?
Yeah, I think the American people are starting to notice the emperor has no clothes, right?
Yeah.
It's an absolute, you don't have to, you just look at how they're incompetent people running it from the top down. If you have poor leadership, if I ran my business like this, I'd be out of business.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. And there's going to be a price to pay. The people in Hawaii are not ones to lay down and just take it. They're going to stand up, they're going to rise up, and they're going to hold these people accountable. And Sam was right. Some of the people that we've talked to it's the Hawaiian people helping the Hawaiian people. Mm-hmm. And they got to see firsthand the people that they vote for every time when they come out, hey, vote for us, vote for us. They started to realize now it's a huge awakening. Sad that it would come to this, but they're starting to realize really who the government is and how incompetent they really are.
I'm getting to the point now, and I've said this before, I grew up a progressive liberal, but I want my tax money back. If this is the Wild West and I'm going to be left on my own every time there's a catastrophe, then give me my money back and let me start developing ways to protect myself, because handing it to you is not working. I think so many people in America are experiencing that. Steve, Sam, I want to thank you for taking the time. I don't want to keep you away from the important work that you're doing there since someone's doing it. Sam, you have another thought? Yeah.
Just to say this, there are some great people that are working in these FEMA camps. We have close colleagues and friends that are in there. There's great first responders, the firefighters, the law enforcement. They are the people of Maui. They're the people of Lahaina. They had families there as well, and I want to say that from our perspective, it is not against those workers. I worked 30 years in the fire service, locking arms with law enforcement as well, and we know that they're going through a tough time themselves. We pray for them. We pray for the people of Maui, for the people of Lahaina, for this community, and certainly those frontline workers that are dealing with the tragedy up front every day right now, walking through the streets of Lahaina, trying to differentiate between what might be a body and what might not be, and you'll never forget those kind of things. So our hearts definitely go out there. I just want to throw that in there at the end here.
I appreciate that, Sam. It's a good point. I don't mean to disparage anyone that's out there that is on the front line, and our best and brightest and bravest do charge in those situations. Those that do that work should be commended. We asked you guys to put together a list, since a lot of people are saying the money from Red Cross isn't really getting there and things like that. You put together a list of places that you are seeing getting the funding and are helping the people. So this is that list for those of you that want to reach out and try and do something. This, of course, will also be, if you signed up to our mailing list, all of this will be in your hands immediately. I'm sure we're going to tag it in the comments right now. But these are groups that really are delivering for the people, and I think it's important that we support them. Steve, Sam, thank you very much for taking the time, and our prayers are with you in your work.
Thanks, Del. Thanks for getting the message out there.
You bet. Take care.